The stars looked different out here. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the main window of the UES horizon, watching space stretch endlessly in all directions. They'd been traveling for 3 weeks now, far beyond any human territory. The mission was simple: find new worlds that humans could live on. What they found instead would change everything. "Captain, we have something big coming our way," Lisa Carter called out from her station. She was the communications officer, a young woman who had joined the crew just 2 years ago. Her voice sounded worried, and Jake could understand why. The radar screen showed something massive heading straight for them. "How big are we talking about?" Jake asked, walking over to look at the readings himself. What he saw made his stomach drop. The object was at least 10 times larger than their ship, and it was moving fast. "It's slowing down, sir," reported Alex Rodriguez from the science station. He was their best expert on alien life, though he had never actually met any aliens before. None of them had. "I think it's a ship." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. First contact with an alien race was something every human dreamed about, but it was also something every human feared. There were stories from other exploration. Ships, rumors of species so dangerous that entire worlds ran from them. But those were just stories, right? The alien ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel just a few miles away from them. Jake had to grab onto his chair to keep from falling as their own ship shook from the energy waves. When the shaking stopped, he looked out the window and saw something that would give him nightmares for years to come. The alien ship looked like a giant hand made of bone and metal. 5 long fingers stretched out from a central palm, each finger ending in sharp points that glowed with red light. The whole thing was black as space itself, with veins of some glowing material running along its surface like blood vessels. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Sir, they're trying to communicate with us," Lisa said. Her hands were shaking as she worked on her controls. "The computer is trying to translate, but it's having trouble. Put it through the speakers," Jake ordered. He straightened his uniform and tried to look calm, even though his hands were sweating. The sound that came through the speakers was unlike anything any human had ever heard. It was deep and harsh, like rocks grinding together, mixed with the roar of some giant beast. The universal translator worked hard to make sense of it, and finally words appeared on the screen. "Small, soft things. You enter our space. Submit or be consumed." The bridge went silent. Everyone stared at the message, trying to understand what it meant. Jake felt cold sweat running down his back. These aliens didn't want to talk or trade, or make friends. They wanted humans to surrender or die. "Captain," Alex said quietly, "I'm reading their life signs now. They're big, sir. Really big. Each one is about 8 feet tall, and they're built like tanks. Their ship has about 200. Of them," Jake looked around at his crew. "There were only 50 humans on the horizon, and their ship was built for exploration, not fighting. They had some basic weapons for dealing with space pirates, but nothing that could handle a real warship. What kind of world do they come from?" Jake asked. Alex worked on his computer for a moment, analyzing the data from their sensors. "From what I can tell, their planet has gravity 4 times stronger than Earth. The air is mostly methane, which would kill us instantly. The temperature swings from boiling hot to freezing cold every few hours. And sir, there are signs of massive radiation storms that happen regularly." Ben Turner, their chief engineer, whistled softly. "No wonder they're so tough. Living on a world like that would make anyone into a monster." Jake thought about Earth and how hard life could be there. Humans had survived ice ages, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, and countless wars. But this alien world sounded like it made Earth look like a peaceful garden. "Sir, they're charging their weapons," Lisa reported. Her voice was getting higher. "With fear, those red lights on their ship are getting brighter." Jake had to make a decision fast. They could try to run, but their ship wasn't fast enough. They could try to fight, but they were completely outgunned. They could try something that might be completely crazy. "Lisa, open a channel to their ship," he said. "I want to talk to them." "But sir," they said, "submit or be consumed." "I don't think they want to talk. Maybe not, but we have to try. We're humans, and humans don't give up without a fight." Lisa opened the communication channel. Jake took a deep breath and spoke slowly and clearly. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration ship Horizon. We did not know this was your territory. We are explorers, not warriors. We search for new worlds to live on, not for fights. The response came back quickly, still in that grinding, roaring voice. Humans. We know nothing of humans. You are small. You are weak. You will submit or die. Maybe small, Jake replied, but we're not weak, and we're not going to submit to anyone. The alien ship's weapons started glowing brighter. Jake could see energy building up in those sharp fingertips. In a few seconds, they would fire, and the horizon would be turned into space dust. All hands prepare for evasive maneuvers, Jake called out over the ship's communication system. Kate, get us moving. Kate Sullivan was their best pilot, a woman who could fly a ship through an asteroid field blindfolded. She had joined the crew because she loved the challenge of flying in dangerous places. Now she had the biggest challenge of her life. The alien weapons fired. 5 beams of red energy shot out from the fingertips of their ship, each beam powerful enough to destroy a small moon. But the horizon wasn't there anymore. Kate had started moving the moment Jake gave the order, spinning their ship in a direction the aliens didn't expect. How did we avoid that? Alex asked, amazed. They're big and strong, Kate said, her hands dancing over the flight controls. But big ships move slowly. We're small and fast. The alien ship tried to turn to follow them, but Kate was right. It moved like a giant trying to catch a fly. The horizon danced around it, avoiding beam after beam of deadly energy. Ben, can our weapons hurt them? Jake asked. Ben looked at his readings and shook his head. Our lasers can't get through their armor, sir. It's like trying to hurt an elephant with a flashlight. Jake watched the alien ship trying to target them, and realized something important. These aliens were used to fighting enemies who stood still and traded shots. They weren't used to enemies who moved and thought and adapted. Maybe that would be enough. Kate, take us into that asteroid field, he ordered, pointing to a group of floating rocks nearby. Sir, that's dangerous. One wrong move, and we'll crash. It's more dangerous to stay here. Those aliens want to kill us, and the asteroids might give us a chance. Kate nodded and turned the ship toward the asteroid field. The horizon shot forward like a bullet, with the massive alien ship following behind. Jake watched the alien vessel, struggling to keep up, and felt the first bit of hope he'd had since this whole thing started. The battle was just beginning. But maybe, just maybe, humans had something these powerful aliens didn't expect. Maybe being small and fast and smart was better than being big and strong and scary. Jake gripped his chair as they entered the asteroid field. Either they would find a way to survive this, or they would die trying, but they would face it as humans, and humans never gave up. The asteroid field was like a deadly maze made of floating rocks. Some were as small as cars, others as big as cities. They spun and crashed into each other, creating a chaos that would destroy any ship unlucky enough to get caught in the wrong place. Kate Sullivan flew the horizon through this madness like she was dancing. Her hands moved over the controls without thinking, steering the ship between rocks that could crush them flat. Behind them, the massive alien ship followed, but it was having trouble. The giant vessel was too big to move quickly between the asteroids. They're still firing at us, Lisa reported from her station. Red beams of energy shot past their ship, hitting asteroids and turning them into glowing pieces of rock. But they can't get a good shot. We're moving too fast. Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien ship struggle to keep up with them. It was like watching a giant trying to catch a mouse. The aliens were strong, and their weapons were powerful, but they couldn't use that strength in a place like this. Captain, I'm getting strange readings from their ship, Alex Rodriguez said, studying his instruments. It looks like they're having problems with their engines. All this spinning and turning is hard on a ship that big. Jake felt a moment of hope. Maybe they could actually survive this. But then he saw something that made his blood run cold. Massive asteroid, bigger than both ships combined, was drifting toward the alien vessel. And the aliens didn't seem to see it coming. Kate, look at that. Jake pointed to the approaching asteroid. They're going to crash. Kate looked and her face went pale. Their ship is too big to dodge it. If they try to blast it apart, the pieces will hit them anyway. Jake watched the alien ship getting closer and closer to certain destruction. These aliens had tried to kill him and his crew just minutes ago. They had demanded surrender and threatened to consume them. Any smart captain would let them crash and count himself lucky to survive. But Jake Morrison wasn't just any captain. He was human. "Kate, get us between that asteroid and their ship," he ordered. "Sir?" Kate looked at him like he had lost his mind. "That's suicide. We'll be crushed." "No, we won't. We're small enough to survive in the gap. Use our mining lasers to break up the asteroid before it hits them." Ben Turner looked up from his engineering station. "Captain, those mining lasers aren't designed for something that big. We'll have to get really close to make it work." "Then we get close," Jake said firmly. "Do it!" Kate took a deep breath and turned the ship toward the massive asteroid. Horizon shot forward, racing to get between the rock and the alien ship. Jake could see the alien's vessel getting closer to impact with every second. Ben charged the mining lasers. Full power. "Charging now, sir?" "But Captain, we only get one shot at this. If we miss, both ships are dead." The Horizon reached the asteroid just as it was about to hit the alien ship. Kate positioned their small vessel right in the path of destruction, and Ben fired the mining lasers at full power. The beams hit the asteroid and started cutting into it, breaking it apart piece by piece. But it wasn't enough. The asteroid was too big, and there wasn't enough time. Pieces of rock started bouncing off both ships. The Horizon shook violently as chunks of stone hit their hull. "We need more power," Ben shouted over the noise of impact. "Redirect power from life support," Jake ordered. "Everything we have, sir. If we do that, and something goes wrong, we'll all die. If we don't do it, we're all dead anyway." Ben redirected the power, and the mining lasers flared brighter. The asteroid started breaking apart faster, but pieces were still flying everywhere. One large chunk hit the alien ship's hull, and Jake could see their lights flickering. "Kate! Get us out of here, Jake!" yelled. Kate spun the ship away from the breaking asteroid, just as the largest pieces flew past where they had been. The alien ship, damaged but alive, drifted away from the destruction. Both vessels were hurt, but both were still in one piece. "Captain, the aliens are trying to communicate again," Lisa said. She sounded surprised. "But this time the message is different. Put it through." The same grinding, roaring voice came through the speakers, but the computer translated different words this time. "Humans, you saved our ship." "Right. Why?" Jake thought. For a moment, before answering, how could he explain to aliens who only understood strength and conquest that humans sometimes helped their enemies? "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. There was a long silence from the alien ship. Then the voice came back, sounding confused. "Right thing? We do not understand this concept. We tried to kill you. You should let us die." "Maybe where you come from? That's how things work," Jake replied. "But humans don't work that way. We help others, even when they're our enemies." Another long silence. Then the alien voice spoke again, but this time it sounded different somehow. Less harsh, more curious. "I am War Prime Zethkalar, commander of this vessel. What are humans?" Jake smiled slightly. This was the first time the aliens had asked a question instead of making a threat. "We're explorers from a world called Earth. We travel through space looking for new places to live and new friends to make." Friends. The alien sounded like he had never heard the word before. What is friends? People who help each other. People who care about each other even when they don't have to. There was another pause. Then Zethkalar spoke again. "My ship is damaged. Your ship is damaged. We cannot fight in this condition." "We don't want to fight," Jake said. "We want to fix our ships and go our separate ways. There is a safe place nearby," Zethkalar said slowly, like he was making a difficult decision. "An old asteroid with caves. Both ships can hide there and make repairs. But I do not understand why you would trust us." Jake looked around at his crew. They all looked nervous but determined. They were scared of these aliens, but they trusted their captain to make the right choice. "Because someone has to make the first move toward peace," Jake said. "And humans are good at making first moves." The next few hours were strange and tense. Both ships limped toward the asteroid that Zethkalar had mentioned. It was a huge rock with deep caves carved into it, probably by some ancient mining operation. The caves were big enough to hide both vessels from any other ships that might come looking. As the repairs began, something unprecedented happened. The two crews started working together. It began when Dr. Amy Foster saw that some of the aliens had been hurt. When the asteroid pieces hit their ship, she was a doctor, and her training told her to help anyone who was injured, even aliens who had tried to kill her.
Captain.
Some of their crew are wounded, she said. I'd like to offer medical help. Jake nodded. Do it, but be careful. Amy took her medical kit and crossed over to the alien ship. The first time she saw a Korathian up close, she almost ran back to her own ship. They were huge, covered in what looked like natural armor, with claws that could cut through metal and eyes that glowed red in the dark. But when she saw one of them lying still with green blood leaking from a wound in his side, her doctor instincts took over. She knelt beside the injured alien and started treating his wound, just like she would treat any human. The other aliens watched in amazement. No one had ever helped a wounded Korathian before, except other Korathians. The idea that a small, soft creature would risk her life to help someone from a completely different species was beyond their understanding. Meanwhile, Ben Turner was working on the Horizon's damaged engines when one of the alien technicians approached him. The creature was smaller than the warriors, but still twice Ben's size. It made some gestures toward the human ship's engine and then toward its own tools. I think he wants to help, Ben told Jake over the communicator. Let him try. We need all the help we can get. The alien technician's tools were unlike anything Ben had ever seen.
Ow.
They were partly machine and partly alive, growing and changing. Shape as needed. In return, Ben showed the alien how human tools worked, and how humans could fix things by understanding how they were built, instead of just making them grow back together. As the hours passed, more small exchanges happened between the two crews. Kate Sullivan shared her food rations with an alien navigator who seemed curious about what humans ate. Alex Rodriguez tried to learn about Korathian biology while teaching them about human science. But the most important exchange was between Jake and Zethkalar themselves. The two commanders met in the cave between their ships, each trying to understand the other. Your species confuses me, Zethkalar said in his grinding voice. You are small and weak, but you do not act small and weak. You saved us when you could have let us die. Jake thought about how to explain it. On our world, we learned that the strongest survive not by being the biggest or the most dangerous, but by working together. When we help others, they help us back. Everyone becomes stronger. Zethkalar's red eyes stared at Jake for a long time. On our world, only the strong survive. The weak are left to die. It has always been this way. Maybe it doesn't have to be, Jake said quietly. As both crews continued their repairs, they began to realize that this meeting was changing them all. The humans were learning that even the most frightening enemies could be reasoned with and helped. The Korathians were learning that strength could come from cooperation instead of conquest. 3 weeks had passed since the two ships took shelter in the ancient asteroid caves. What started as emergency repairs had turned into something nobody expected. The human crew and the Korathian warriors were working together, learning from each other, and slowly beginning to understand that everything they thought they knew about strength might be wrong. Warprime Zethkalar stood in the human ship's data center, staring at information that made his world shake. He had asked to see human history, thinking it would show him how such weak creatures had survived long enough to reach space. What he found instead was a story that terrified him more than any battle he had ever fought. Your world tried to kill you, he said to Ryan Parker, the human who had been showing him the historical records. Over and over again, your world tried to kill you. Ryan nodded calmly. Earth isn't the friendliest place to live. We've had ice ages that lasted thousands of years, volcanoes that blocked out the sun for decades, meteors that wiped out most life on the planet, diseases that killed millions, earthquakes, floods, hurricanes, droughts. His red eyes glowed brighter as he processed this information. My world, Karatha Prime is harsh, but your world. It sounds worse. How did you survive? We adapted, Ryan said simply. Every time something tried to kill us, some humans found a way to live through it, and they taught their children how to survive. I think something else would try to kill us, and we'd adapt again. The Korathian commander studied the records more carefully, saw humans living in frozen wastelands and scorching deserts, them building cities on earthquake zones and farming in places where nothing should grow. He saw them fighting wars with each other, then working together when faced with bigger threats. This makes no sense, Zethkalar growled. Your people fight each other constantly. On Karatha Prime, we have one leader, one way of thinking, one purpose. How do you accomplish anything when you cannot agree? Ryan smiled. That's exactly how we accomplish things. When humans disagree, we come up with different solutions to the same problem. Most of the time, one of those solutions works better than anything we could have thought of alone. Zethkalar turned to look at the human crew working around him. They were all different from each other. Different colors, different sizes, different ways of thinking. On his world, such differences would be seen as weakness. But these humans used their differences to make their whole group stronger. Meanwhile, in the medical bay of the Korathian ship, Dr. Amy Foster was making discoveries that worried her. She had been treating injured Korathians for weeks now, and she was beginning to understand how their bodies worked. What she found was disturbing. Lisa, come look at this. Amy called to the communications officer, who had been helping her translate Korathian medical terms. Lisa came over to the scanner display where Amy was studying Korathian biology. What am I looking at? Korathian body chemistry, Amy said, pointing to the readings. See these hormone levels? Oh, their aggression chemicals are 10 times higher than anything we've ever seen. They're literally built to fight all the time. It doesn't sound so bad for a warrior species, Lisa said. Look at this. Amy pointed to another section of the display. Their bonding hormones, the chemicals that help people form relationships and work together, are almost non-existent. They can barely form friendships, let alone the kind of cooperative relationships that humans take for granted. Lisa frowned. So they're stuck being aggressive? It's worse than that, Amy said quietly. They're exoskeletons, those armor-like shells they have, they can't change. Humans can adapt to new environments because our bodies are flexible. We can get stronger, or faster, or develop resistance to diseases. But Karathians are locked into one body type forever. What does that mean? Amy looked toward the Korathian crew members who were working nearby. It means they're evolutionary dead ends. They're perfectly adapted for their world, but they can't adapt to anything else. If their world ever changes, or if they need to live somewhere else, they'll die out. The conversation was interrupted by shouting from the main work area. Amy and Lisa rushed over to see what was happening. They found a group of Korathians standing around one of their own. A smaller female named Vexthera, who served as Zethkalar's second-in-command. Vexthera was arguing with a larger male warrior, named Krexanoth. Even though Amy couldn't understand all the words, it was clear that Krexanoth was angry about something. His claws were extended, and his red eyes were blazing with fury. What's going on? Amy asked Kate Sullivan, who had been working nearby. From what I can understand, Krexanoth thinks Vexthera is becoming too friendly with us humans, Kate explained. He says she's forgetting her duty as a Korathian warrior. Amy watched as Vexthera stood her ground against the much larger male. The female Korathian was barely 6 feet tall, small by their standards, with shorter claws and duller armor. But she didn't back down from Krexanoth's threats. She's different from the others, Amy observed. Less aggressive, more thoughtful. Yeah, and from what I can tell, that makes her an outcast among her own people, Kate said sadly. Captain Jake. Morrison arrived just as the argument was getting more heated. He couldn't understand the Korathian language, but he could see that Krexanoth was getting ready to attack Vexthera. Jake stepped between them without thinking. Hold on there, Jake said calmly, raising his hands. Whatever this is about, violence isn't going to solve it. Krexanoth snarled at the human captain. You do not understand, soft one. This female shames our species with her weakness. She thinks like you humans, and it makes her unfit to be Korathian. Maybe. Thinking like humans isn't such a bad thing, Jake replied. We've survived everything our world could throw at us. That took strength. You survived through luck and hiding, Krexanoth spat. True strength comes from conquest and domination. Before Jake could reply, Vexthera spoke up. Her voice was quieter than the male's, but it carried authority. I've watched these humans for weeks, Krexanoth. They accomplish things that our greatest warriors cannot. They work together where we fight alone. They create where we only destroy. Perhaps there are different kinds of strength. Krexanoth raised his claws threateningly. Such words are heresy. I will not listen to this corruption. Then you will miss the greatest lesson our species has ever been offered, came a deep voice. From behind them, everyone turned to see War Prime Zethkalar approaching. The massive commander had been listening to the argument, and his expression was thoughtful rather than angry. Commander Krexanoth said, lowering his claws slightly. Surely you do not agree with this female's strange ideas. Zethkalar looked at his subordinate for a long moment. I have spent 3 weeks studying human history, Krexanoth. I have seen things that challenge everything we believe about survival and strength. He gestured toward the human crew members who were watching the confrontation. These creatures come from a world that makes Karatha Prime look gentle, yet they survive not through individual strength but through cooperation. They protect their weak instead of abandoning them. They share knowledge instead of hoarding it. And because of this, they have spread across their entire world and reached the stars. Krexanoth's eyes flared brighter. They are weak, Commander, soft and small and fragile. Are they? Zethkalar asked. They saved our ship when they could, have let us die. They share their food with us when they have little to spare. They treat our wounded without asking for anything in return. Is this weakness, or is this a strength we do not understand? The big warrior had no answer for that. He looked around at the humans working alongside his fellow Korathians, and for the first time he seemed uncertain. Alex Rodriguez chose that moment to approach the group. The human xenobiologist had been listening to the conversation, and he had something important to say. War Prime Zethkalar, may I ask you something? Alex said politely. Speak, human scientists. Your people are incredibly strong and tough. Your technology is amazing. But in all the time we've been working together, I've noticed something. You don't seem to enjoy anything. You don't laugh or play or create art or music. Everything you do is about survival and war. Is that really how you want to live forever? Zethkalar was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke, and his voice was softer than anyone had ever heard it. On Karatha Prime, there is no time for enjoyment. Every moment is a battle to survive. We have forgotten that there might be other ways to live. Oh, but there are other ways, Vexthera said quietly. I have watched these humans, and they find joy even in difficult times. They make beauty even when surrounded by danger. They care for each other, not because they have to, but because they want to. Krexanoth made a disgusted sound. Such talk makes me sick. We are Karathians. We are the strongest species in the galaxy. Are we? Zethkalar asked. Or are we just the most frightened? The question hung in the air like a challenge. For the first time in their lives, the Karathians were forced to consider that their way of life might not be the only way, or even the best way. Ben Turner, who had been quietly working on a repair project, looked up from his tools. You know, back on Earth, we have a saying. The strongest trees aren't the ones that never bend. They're the ones that bend with the wind, but don't break. The repair work had become something neither species expected. What started as fixing broken ships had turned into the first real cultural exchange between humans and Korathians. Every day brought new discoveries, new questions, and new challenges. To everything both sides thought they knew about life. Ben Turner stood next to a Korathian biotechnician named Yelthar, watching in amazement as the alien worked on their ship's systems. Yeltzor's tools were alive, growing and changing shape as needed. When a wire broke, the tool would sprout tiny tentacles that would weave new connections. When a circuit needed repair, the tool would secrete a substance that hardened into exactly the right component. How does it know what to do? Ben asked, fascinated. Yeltzar's red eyes flickered with what might have been amusement. The tools are part of our ship. The ship is part of us. We grow everything we need. Ben showed Yelthar a human repair kit in return. We make our tools instead of growing them. We have to understand how everything works, so we can fix it when it breaks. The Korathion examined the human tools carefully. They were simple metal and plastic devices, but they could be used to fix almost anything if the user understood the principles behind them. Your tools require knowledge, Yalthar observed. Our tools require only instinct. Which is better? Ben asked. Yalthar was quiet for a moment. I do not know. Our way is faster, but your way works on things we have never seen before. Perhaps both ways have value. In another part of the cave system, Dr. Amy Foster was having the most important conversation of her career. War Prime Zeth Kalar had asked her to explain human evolution, and what she was telling him was shaking his understanding of life itself. You mean your weak survive? Zeth Kalar asked, his voice full of confusion. Not just survive, Amy explained patiently. They contribute. Some of our greatest leaders were physically weak. Some of our best thinkers couldn't fight at all. Made discoveries that helped all humans survive better. She showed him pictures from human history on her tablet computer. This man was confined to a wheelchair his whole life, but his theories about space and time helped us reach the stars. This woman was considered too emotional to be a real scientist. But she discovered radiation in one of the highest honors our species can give. Zeth Kalar stared at the images. On Karatha Prime, such individuals would be left to die as infants. It would be seen as weakness in the bloodline. And by doing that, you've probably lost thousands of potential geniuses, Amy said gently. Humans learn that diversity makes us stronger. Different kinds of people solve different kinds of problems. The Korathan commander was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke, and his voice was heavy with something that might have been regret. We have made ourselves prisoners of our own strength. Meanwhile, Kate Sullivan was working with a young Korathion navigator named Kithala on plotting courses through dangerous space. Kithala was considered defective by Korathion standards. She was smaller than other females. Her claws were dull. And she preferred to think before acting rather than relying on instinct. Your people don't value you very much, do they? Kate asked as they worked together on navigation calculations. Cathela's eyes dimmed slightly. I am weak by our standards. Think too much and fight too little. Many believe I should not have been allowed to live. That's terrible, Kate said. But you're one of the smartest beings I've ever met. You see patterns in space that our computers miss? Your people are idiots if they can't see how valuable you are? Really think I have value? Cathela asked quietly. I know you do. Watch. This. Kate pulled up a complex navigation problem on her computer. It was a route through an unstable nebula that would normally take hours to calculate safely. Show me how you would solve this. Kithala studied the data for a few minutes, then began sketching a route with her claw. Her approach was completely different from human methods, but it was brilliant. She saw the nebula not as a series of obstacles, but as a living system with its own patterns and rhythms. There, she said, after 10 minutes. This path follows the natural flow of the gases. It is longer than a straight line, but much safer. Kate ran Cathela's route through the computer and whistled in amazement. This would take our best navigators days to figure out, and you did it in minutes. Hey, your people are crazy not to see this gift. For the first time since Kate had known her, Cathela's eyes brightened with something like pride. But not all the Korathians were adapting well to the new ideas. Krexanoth and several other warriors had formed their own group, refusing to work with the humans and growing more aggressive each day. They watched their fellow Korathians learning from the soft aliens with disgust and anger. This is corruption, Krexanoth snarled to his followers. Our people are becoming weak, infected by human ideas. Soon they will forget what it means to be Korathion. Subcommander Vexeta overheard this conversation and approached the group. Perhaps forgetting some things would not be so bad, she said calmly. Krexanoth turned on her with fury in his glowing eyes. You have become the worst of all, female. You think like them now? You are no longer truly Korathion. If being truly Korathian means being unable to learn, unable to grow, unable to see strength in new forms, then perhaps I do not want to be truly Korathian, Vexera replied. The big warrior's claws extended, and several humans nearby tensed for violence, but Vexthera stood her ground, unafraid. "You would fight me over ideas?" she asked. "How very Corthian of you. How very predictable." Before Krexanoth could strike, alarms began blaring throughout the cave system. Captain Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system. "All personnel, we have incoming ships. There's multiple vessels approaching fast." Everyone rushed to the monitoring stations. The displays showed a fleet of Corthian warships dropping out of hyperspace near the asteroid. There were 12 vessels, each one larger and more heavily armed than Zethkalar's ship. "It is the High Command," Zethkalar said grimly. "They have come looking for us." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Will they attack us?" "They will demand explanations," Zethkalar replied. "And when they learn what has happened here, they will see it as contamination. They will order all humans killed, and any Corythaean who has been influenced by human ideas will be executed for corruption." The communication system crackled to life with an incoming message from the fleet. The voice that came through was deeper and harsher than even Zethalar's. "War Prime Zethalar, this is Fleet Commander Drexarak. You were ordered to investigate alien intrusion and report back. Your silence has lasted too long. Prepare to be boarded and inspected." Zethkalar looked at the humans around him, then at his own crew. In just a few weeks, everything had changed. His people had learned things that challenged their entire way of life, and now the old ways were coming to destroy the new. "Captain Morrison," he said formally, "I must speak with my high command. But I fear they will not understand what has happened here." Jake nodded grimly. "What can we do?"
"Nothing,"
Zethkalar said sadly. "Fleet Commander Drexarak is old and traditional. He believes only in the ancient ways. He will see cooperation with aliens as weakness and contamination with enemy ideas as treason." Vexthera stepped forward. "Then we must make him understand." "How?" Krexanoth demanded. "He is set in his ways, like all the High Command. They will never accept these human ideas." "Maybe not," Vexthera said, "but we have to try. What we have learned here is too important to let die." Dr. Amy Foster had been listening to the conversation with growing concern. "What exactly happens? 2 Carathians who are considered contaminated?" Zethakalas' eyes dimmed. "They are terminated. Their genetic material is removed from the breeding pools. It is as if they never existed." Amy felt sick. "That's genocide. You're talking about killing your own people for learning new things." "It is our way," Zethkalar said simply. "It has always been our way." "Well, maybe it's time for a new way," Jake said firmly. "We're not going to let them kill you for becoming friends with humans." Krexanoth laughed harshly. "And how will you stop them, soft one? There are 12 warships out there, each one capable of destroying your vessel with a single shot." Jake looked around at his crew and the Corthians who had become their friends. Kate Sullivan, who had learned to navigate impossible routes with Kaela. Ben Turner, who had discovered new ways to build things by working with Yelthar. Amy Foster, who had treated alien wounds without hesitation, and Vexthera, who had become a bridge between 2 completely different ways of thinking. "I don't know," Jake admitted, "but humans don't give up just because the odds are bad. We find a way." The approaching fleet was getting closer. Soon Fleet Commander Drexarak would board their ships and see what had happened. He would see Carathians and humans working together, learning from each other, and becoming something new. Zethkalar made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. "I will not allow the High Command to destroy what we have built here. These humans have shown us truths about strength and survival that our people need to learn." "You would defy the High Command?" Krexanoth asked in shock. "I would save our species from destroying itself," Zethkalar replied. "Humans have survived everything their world could throw at them because they adapt and change." The 12 Corythaean warships surrounded the asteroid like predators circling wounded prey. Each ship was massive, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire cities. Inside the asteroid caves, Captain Jake Morrison stood beside War Prime Zethkalar, watching the fleet on their monitors and knowing that the next few hours would determine the fate of both their species. Fleet Commander Drexterock is requesting permission to board, Lisa Carter reported from the communication station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes. Let him come, Zethkalar said firmly. It is time to face the old ways with new truths. Jake looked around at the mixed group of humans and Korathians who had gathered in the main cave. Some were scared, others determined, but all of them had been changed by their weeks together. They had become something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. The boarding shuttle arrived 20 minutes later. Fleet Commander Drexterock emerged from it like a nightmare made real. He was even larger than Zethkalar, his armor darker and more scarred, his red eyes burning with the fury of someone who had never questioned the old ways. Behind him came a squad of elite warriors, each one a perfect example of Korathian strength and aggression. War Prime Zethkalar Drexterock's voice was like grinding stone. You have been silent for weeks. Your mission was to investigate alien intrusion and eliminate the threat. Why do I find their ship intact and their crew alive? Zethkalar stood tall, meeting his superior's glowing gaze without flinching. Fleet Commander, I have discovered something more important than elimination. I have discovered evolution. Drexterock's eyes flared brighter. Explain yourself. These humans are not the weak prey we expected, Zethkalar began. They come from a Deathworld that makes Karatha Prime seem gentle. They have survived ice ages, meteor impacts, plagues, and disasters that would have destroyed us. And they did it not through individual strength, but through cooperation? The fleet commander looked around at the mixed groups of humans and Korathians working together. His expression grew more disgusted with each alien face he saw. I see contamination, he snarled. I see Korathian warriors reduced to playing with soft alien pets. This is exactly what I feared would happen. Subcommander Vexthara stepped forward. With respect, Fleet Commander, what you see is growth. These humans have taught us things about survival that we never understood. Drexterock turned his burning gaze on her. You dare speak to me, female? You who are barely fit to call yourself Korathian? Before anyone could react, something unexpected happened. Captain Jake Morrison stepped between Vexthara and the fleet commander. Don't talk to her like that, Jake said quietly. She's one of the bravest and smartest people I've ever met, and she deserves respect. The cave fell silent. A human, tiny compared to the massive Korathian commander, had just defended a Korathian female against her own superior. It was something that had never happened in the history of either species. Drexterock stared down at Jake with pure hatred. You dare interfere in Korathian discipline, alien? I dare stand up for my friend, Jake replied calmly. Humans do. Friend. Drexterock laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Korathians do not have friends. They have superiors and subordinates, strong and weak, predator and prey. These are the only relationships that matter. Dr. Amy Foster had been watching the confrontation with growing anger. As a doctor, she had spent weeks treating Korathian wounded, learning about their biology, coming to understand them as individuals rather than monsters. Now she couldn't stay quiet. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, she said, stepping forward. You've made yourselves prisoners of your own fear. Drexterock's claws extended. Fear. We fear nothing, soft one. You fear everything, Amy replied. You fear change? You fear weakness? You fear anything different from what you know? That's why you kill your own people who think new thoughts. That's why you destroy anyone who might challenge your ideas. You're not strong, you're terrified. The fleet commander raised his claws to strike, but Zethkalar blocked his path. She speaks truth, fleet commander. These humans have shown me that our way is not the only way, and perhaps not even the best way. Stand aside, War Prime, Drexterock commanded. You have been contaminated by alien influence. You are no longer fit for command. Perhaps not, Zethkalar agreed. But I am. Fit to protect those who have become precious to me. Drexterock's warriors started to advance, but they stopped when they saw something that confused them. The humans and Korathians in the cave had moved to stand together, forming a mixed line of defenders. Species that should have been enemies were prepared to fight side by side. You would fight your own people for these aliens? Drexterock asked in disbelief. I would fight anyone who tries to destroy what we have built here, Zethkalar replied. Human and Korathian alike have found something new together. We have found hope. Young Kithala stepped forward from the group. As the smallest and supposedly weakest Korathian present, she was the last person anyone expected to speak, but her voice carried clearly through the cave. Fleet Commander, may I show you something? Rextoric looked at her with contempt. You are defective. You have no right to speak. That's exactly why you should listen to her, Kate Sullivan said, moving to stand beside Kithella. She sees things the rest of you miss. Kithella activated a holographic display showing the navigation route she had calculated through the unstable nebula. This is a path through the Koresh Nebula, Fleet Commander. Your best navigators said it was impossible to cross safely. But working with human methods, I found a way. Drexterax studied the display. The route was brilliant, using principles that no Korathian had ever considered. It would cut travel time between two major systems by weeks and open up new territories. For exploration? How? He demanded. By thinking like a human thinks, Kithela said simply. By seeing cooperation where Korathians see only conflict. By finding patterns where Korathians see only chaos. Ben Turner stepped forward with Yeltar, the Korathian biotechnician. We've been working together on propulsion systems, Ben explained. Combining human engineering with Korathian biotechnology, the result is faster and more efficient than anything either of our species has built alone. They demonstrated their hybrid engine design on a small model. The device used living components that could adapt and repair themselves, guided by control systems that could optimize performance in real time. Alex Rodriguez joined them with his biological research. Fleet Commander, your people are evolutionary dead ends. Your aggression chemicals prevent cooperation. Your rigid bodies can't adapt to new environments, and your culture kills anyone who might help you evolve. But humans can teach you how to change that. One by one, every human and Korathian in the cave showed Drexterac what they had accomplished together. Art created by combining human creativity with Korathian biosculpting. Music that blended human rhythm with Korathian harmonics. Scientific discoveries that neither species could have made alone. But the most powerful demonstration came from Dr. Amy Foster. She had been treating a Korathian warrior who had been badly injured in the original asteroid collision. The warrior should have died from his wounds. But Amy had used human medical techniques combined with Korathian biotechnology to save his life. This is Thexgar, Amy said, indicating the recovered warrior. By your standards, he should have been left to die because he was too weak to heal on his own. But by saving him, we discovered new ways to treat injuries that will help all Korathians survive better. Thexgar stepped forward and knelt before Drexterac. Fleet Commander, this soft human female gave me life when our own ways would have given me death. She asked for nothing in return. She saved me simply because preserving life mattered to her. Drextoric stared at the living proof of human Korathian cooperation surrounding him. Everything he had believed about strength and weakness was being challenged by evidence he couldn't deny. This changes nothing, he said finally, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. Cooperation may produce temporary benefits, but only. The strong survive in the end. You're wrong, Jake said gently. The strong don't survive alone. They survive because they make everyone around them stronger too. Vexera moved to address her fleet commander directly. Sir, what if strength isn't about being able to destroy? What if it's about being able to create? What if the most powerful thing we can do is help others become powerful too? For the first time in his long life, Fleet Commander Drexterac had no answer. He looked around at the impossible sight of natural enemies working together, creating together, growing together. Everything his culture had taught him said this was wrong, but the evidence of his own eyes said it was right. I must think about these things, he said slowly. I must consult with the High Command. The High Command wasn't here, Zethkalar said firmly. They didn't see what we've seen. They didn't learn what we've learned. The decision is yours too. Drexterac was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke, and his voice was different than it had been before. Softer, more uncertain, but also more open. Perhaps Perhaps we have been strong in the wrong ways for too long.